They say, betrayal never comes from your enemies. It comes from the people you let into your home, the ones who know your laughter, your secrets, your heart. On the night everything fell apart, the rain wouldn't stop. It hit the windows like it was trying to warn her, but Emma didn't listen. She sat at the dining table, surrounded by the ghost of laughter that used to fill that house. There was a wine glass on the table, hers and another one beside it, still half full, still warm. It wasn't hers, it was Claire's. That glass was all that remained of a friendship that once felt unbreakable. Emma met Claire 2 years earlier, in a place as ordinary as it gets, a friend's birthday barbecue. Nothing special. Just music, the smell of grilled food, and people laughing too loudly after a few beers. Emma had gone alone that day. She didn't even plan to stay long. But then she met Claire standing by the pool, holding a drink, telling a ridiculous story about how she once locked herself out of her own apartment in pajamas. Everyone laughed. Emma laughed too. There was something magnetic about Claire, the kind of person who made you feel like you'd known her forever. Within an hour, they were talking like old friends. By the end of the night, they'd exchanged numbers and promised to hang out again, and they did. Every week after that, coffee on Sundays, movies on Fridays, random road trips just to clear our heads. Claire slipped into Emma's life like she'd always belonged. They're becoming part of every plan, every joke, every photo. Even Emma's husband, Ryan, liked her. He'd say things like, "It's nice that you finally have a friend like that. You're always giving so much, it's good to see someone give it back." And for a while, it was good. Celebrated birthdays together, shared dinners, even spent holidays side by side. Claire was family, but sometimes, family is the last place you should let a stranger live. It started small, a comment here, little secret there. Claire began showing up even when she wasn't invited, dropping by with leftover cake or just wanting to talk. At first, Emma didn't mind, but then Claire started staying late. Too late. There were nights when Ryan and Claire sat talking in the kitchen long after Emma went to bed. Once, she woke up around midnight and found them laughing softly over a bottle of wine. They looked up, startled as if caught doing something wrong. Claire was the first to speak.
"Oh, we didn't mean to wake you,"
she said, smiling like it was nothing. Emma smiled back, but something inside her twisted that quiet instinct that whispers when something feels off. But she ignored it. She didn't want to be that kind of woman, paranoid, jealous, unreasonable. Claire was her best friend, Ryan was her husband, and trust. Trust was supposed to mean something. Weeks passed, and months. Claire became a constant presence. She helped decorate the house, cooked with Emma, even joined family gatherings. Emma's parents adored her. Everyone did. But behind every perfect moment, something darker was forming, like a storm you can sense before it breaks the sky open. Emma started to notice small things: a message Claire deleted too quickly, a shared look that lasted 1 second too long, a sudden quiet whenever she entered the room. Her heart told her what her mind refused to believe. Her friend was slowly becoming her enemy. The truth didn't come in a scream, it came in silence, in the spaces between laughter and lies. That night, as the rain poured and thunder shook the world outside, Emma stared at that second glass of wine on her dining table. The scent of Claire's perfume still lingered in the air. She closed her eyes, and for the first time, she saw everything clearly. The woman she'd called her best friend had been planting her ruin from the very beginning. And as lightning illuminated her reflection in the dark window, Emma made a silent vow to forgive, not to forget, but to expose. Because the worst kind of betrayal is the one that hides behind love. The first few months of my friendship with Claire felt like stepping into the sun after a long, cold winter. It wasn't that I was lonely. I had Ryan, my husband, and a small, steady circle of friends, but meeting Claire filled a space I never even knew was empty. We started a tradition of meeting for coffee every Sunday morning at the same little cafe downtown. It was one of those quirky places with mismatched chairs, walls covered in old black and white photos, and the constant comforting smell of freshly baked croissants. Claire always ordered the same thing, a caramel latte, extra syrup, she'd say with a wink, because life's too short to be bitter. I laughed every single time, even though I'd heard that line a dozen times. That was just part of Claire's magic. She had this incredible ability to turn ordinary, everyday moments into something special, something that felt like a scene from a movie. We'd sit there for hours talking about everything and nothing. We'd dissect old relationships, confess our childhood dreams, and share fears we'd never breathe to another soul. Claire had this way of listening, this intense focus that made you feel like you were the only person in the world that your words truly mattered. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the window and lit up the dust motes dancing in the air, she leaned in and said quietly, "You know, I've never had a friend like you before." A warmth spread through my chest. I smiled, genuinely touched. "Me neither," I replied, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. From that day on, it felt like we were inseparable. Soon, our Sunday coffees weren't enough. Claire started coming over on weekdays. She'd help me cook dinner, then we'd crash on the couch to watch trashy reality shows, or just sit on the porch with a bottle of wine, talking late into the night. Ryan would often join us, laughing at our endless inside jokes. It all felt so simple, so easy, so real. At least, it felt that way at the time. The three of us even started taking weekend trips together, little escapes to quiet nearby towns. We'd drive for hours with the windows down, singing along badly to old songs on the radio and taking silly photos at random gas stations. Claire always claimed the passenger seat, propping her bare feet on the dashboard, her hair whipping around her face in the wind. I remember Ryan saying once with a fond smile, "You two are like sisters." I laughed and agreed. "Yeah, I guess we are." But Claire didn't laugh. She just smiled, a strange, unreadable smile that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Looking back, there were other small moments, tiny, almost invisible cracks that I chose to ignore. Like how Claire's compliments towards Ryan started to feel a little too frequent, a little too personal. Or the way she'd make these playful jokes like, "Careful, Ryan. If Emma ever gets tired of you, I might just have to steal you for myself." Everyone would laugh, and I'd laugh along with them. But each time, a small, comfortable flicker would spark in my gut. But I always pushed it away, told myself it was harmless. That's just how Claire was, flirty, loud, free-spirited. I didn't want to be the insecure friend. One night, Ryan and I hosted a small dinner party at our house. Nothing fancy, just a few close friends, good food, some music, and plenty of laughter. Claire was my right-hand woman, helping with everything. She showed up early with a bouquet of flowers and even brought her famous chocolate cake. As the night wore on, the wine flowed freely and the music got louder. I remember watching Claire dance barefoot in the middle of our living room, her laughter echoing off the walls. She grabbed my hand and pulled me into the dance with her. For that one moment, I felt so overwhelmingly happy that I forgot everything else. Saw the little worries, the bills, the stress. It was just friendship, pure and joyful. But later, after most of the guests had trickled out, I noticed something shift. Claire and Ryan were in the kitchen, supposedly cleaning up. I could hear their voices, soft and low, their laughter blending with the gentle hum of the dishwasher. It felt intimate. When I walked in, they both fell silent. Claire turned around first, her smile appearing just a little too quickly. "We were just talking about your amazing cooking skills," she said brightly. "Ryan says you could open your own restaurant." I smiled back, trying to match her energy, but something in my chest felt heavy, tight. It was the distinct feeling of having walked into a scene I wasn't meant to see. I told myself I was overthinking it. Of course I was. They were friends. We were like family. But that's the thing about betrayal. It rarely announces itself with a bang, slips in quietly, disguised as closeness, wearing the face of a friend. A few weeks later, Claire began stopping by even when I wasn't home. She'd say she was just dropping something off or checking on Ryan while he worked on that garage project. I never questioned it. Why would I? I trusted them both completely. Until one day I came home from work and found Claire's sweater on the couch. It wasn't tossed aside carelessly. It was folded neatly, too neatly, a silent, deliberate statement. When I asked her about it later, she just laughed it off. "Oh, I must have left it last time we all watched a movie. You know how forgetful I am." I smiled, even laughed with her. But deep down, I felt a fundamental shift. A crack had formed. And trust, once it's cracked, never quite fits back together the same way again. Still, I kept pretending. Kept telling myself that Claire was my best friend, that Ryan loved me more than anything, that everything was fine. Because sometimes denial is just so much easier than facing the devastating truth. But the truth has a funny way of finding you, especially when you least expect it. And for me, it was about to arrive in the most painful way imaginable. The weeks that followed were quieter. Too quiet. Emma noticed little things first, like how Ryan smiled at his phone more often, or how Claire stopped posting pictures of the two of them on social media. It wasn't that she expected constant validation, but something about the silence felt wrong. One evening, Emma was folding laundry in the living room when Claire texted, "Hey, thinking of stopping by tomorrow. You home?" Emma smiled and typed back, "Yeah, come by anytime." But Claire didn't show up. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't explain. It wasn't like her. Claire was many things: dramatic, impulsive, emotional, but she was never distant. When Emma mentioned it to Ryan, he shrugged. "She probably got busy," he said without looking up from his laptop. "Yeah," Emma replied, forcing a smile, rubbly. But that night she couldn't sleep. She lay awake listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards, the rhythmic breathing of the man beside her, and she felt utterly alone. It wasn't just about Claire, it was about the feeling. That sense that something in her life had shifted almost imperceptibly. Like a picture hanging slightly crooked on the wall. The next morning, Emma decided to call Claire. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. She left a message, cheerful and casual. "Hey, just checking in. Miss you. Call me when you can." No answer. Days passed. When they finally met again, Claire was different. She looked the same wavy hair, same effortless smile, but there was something colder behind her eyes. They met at the same cafe they always went to, the one with the mismatched chairs and the croissants that always smelled like home. But this time, it felt like a set, familiar, but hollow. "You've been busy," Emma said lightly, stirring her coffee. Claire shrugged. "Yeah, just life, you know? Everything okay?" Of course, why wouldn't it be? Its silence that followed wasn't friendly. It was fragile. Emma smiled through it anyway. That's what she did, she kept the peace. As they said goodbye, Claire hugged her tightly. But even that felt rehearsed, like she was pretending to care. That night, Ryan came home late. Again, he said he'd stayed after work helping a friend fix his car. Emma wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe both of them. Trust isn't something that disappears in one day. It erodes slowly, piece by piece. Until one morning, you wake up and realize you don't recognize the life you reliving. The next weekend, Emma's parents came over for dinner. She cooked her mother's favorite dish, roasted chicken with rosemary, and set the table with her grandmother's old plates. Claire had been invited to, but didn't come. When her mom asked about her, Emma smiled weakly. "She's just been busy lately." Her father nodded. "That girl's like family to you, huh?" Emma hesitated. "Yeah, she was." Later that night, while cleaning up the table, Emma noticed something strange on Ryan's phone. A notification popped up just for a second before the screen dimmed. It was a message from Claire. The preview said, "Last night was then it vanished." Emma froze. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. She picked up the phone, her hands trembling, but it was locked. When Ryan came back into the kitchen, she smiled like nothing had happened. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," she said softly. "Just tired." That night, she didn't confront him. She didn't cry or scream. She just lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling, replaying that one message over and over in her head. Last night was what? What was last night? She didn't know, but her mind filled in the blanks anyway. Over the next few days, she tried to act normal. She went to work, cooked dinner, smiled when people talked, but inside, she was unraveling. She started noticing more clues. Claire wearing a bracelet Emma had never seen before. A man's gift? Maybe? Ryan smelling faintly of Claire's perfume. Little things that could have meant nothing, or everything. One evening, while Ryan was in the shower, Emma picked up his phone again. This time, it was unlocked. Her heart raced as she scrolled through his messages. She didn't find anything obvious. No confessions, no I love yous. But the absence of messages was almost worse. Every chat between him and Claire had been deleted. Emma's hand trembled. Why delete messages if there's nothing to hide? She set the phone down slowly, breathing unevenly. She wanted to confront him, to demand the truth. But what if she was wrong? What if this paranoia was just destroying her from the inside out? That night, she sat on the porch alone, staring at the stars. The wind was cool against her skin, carrying the faint scent of rain. When somewhere inside the house, Ryan laughed at something on TV. It was the same laugh he used to give her. And now, it sounded like a stranger's. Emma closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "I just need proof." One way or another, and deep down she knew, once she found it, nothing would ever be the same again. For days, Emma tried to ignore the storm building inside her. She told herself it was just her imagination, that she was tired, stressed, overthinking. But the more she tried to push it away, the louder the doubt became. It was like living in a house where every floorboard creaked with secrets. One Friday afternoon, while Ryan was at work, Emma decided to stop by Claire's place. She hadn't done that in a while. Usually Claire was the one coming over. Something in her gut told her to go. Claire lived in a cozy apartment near the park, filled with plants and art prints. When Emma knocked, there was no answer. But the door was slightly ajar. "Claire," she called softly, pushing it open. No response. She stepped inside, sunlight streaming through half-closed blinds, dust floating in the air. Claire's phone buzzed on the table. A message appeared. It was from Ryan. "Can't stop thinking about last night." The world stopped. Emma stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. She stared at the message, unable to breathe. There was no misunderstanding this time. Her fingers brushed against the edge of the table. She felt cold, detached, like her body and mind were no longer connected. This was it, the proof she thought she needed. But instead of anger, what she felt first was grief, deep, hollow grief. Because once you have proof, there's no space left for hope. She left the apartment quietly, closing the door behind her. The sound echoed down the hallway like a final goodbye. Outside, the sky had turned gray. The first drops of rain began to fall as she reached her car. She sat there for a long time, watching the windshield blur. She wanted to scream, to cry, to hit something, but instead she just whispered, "Why? Why Claire? Why Ryan? Why them, of all people?" That evening, she didn't go home right away. She drove aimlessly through the city, past familiar streets, past their favorite cafe, past everything that used to feel safe. Every corner seemed to whisper reminders of what she'd lost. When she finally returned home, Ryan was already there, sitting on the couch. He smiled when she walked in, that same easy smile she used to love. "Hey," he said, "you're late. Everything okay?" Emma nodded. "Yeah, just had a lot on my mind." She watched him carefully. The way his eyes flickered when he looked at her. The way his hand twitched as he reached for the remote. He was nervous. She could feel it, but she didn't confront him. Not yet. She wanted to see how far the lies would go. Over the next few days, Emma played a part. She smiled, cooked, and laughed when she was supposed to. Meanwhile, she started keeping notes, small details that didn't add up. Ryan's sudden late meetings, Claire's random disappearances, the way they both avoided talking about each other now. Then came the night she followed him. It was a Wednesday. Ryan said he was going out for drinks with coworkers. Emma waited 10 minutes after he left, then grabbed her keys and followed his car. The streets were dark, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement. He drove across town, not toward downtown where the bars were, but toward the old park by the lake. She parked a few spaces away and watched from the car. At first, nothing. Just the sound of wind rustling the trees. Then she saw him. Ryan and Claire stood near the water, close to close. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. She laughed softly, the same laugh Emma had heard 1,000 times before. Emma gripped the steering wheel, tears spilling down her face. Every denial, every lie, every excuse, it all came crashing down in that single moment. She didn't get out. She didn't confront them. She just sat there, watching the two people she trusted most betray her under the streetlight's glow. After a while, they left together, hand in hand. Emma waited until their car disappeared before starting her own engine. The drive home felt endless. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. She didn't feel anger anymore, just emptiness. That night, she went straight to the shower. The water was scalding, but she barely noticed. It felt like she was trying to wash off someone else's story, one she never agreed to be part of. When she came out, Ryan was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. She stood there for a long time, just watching him. "I saw you," she murmured under her breath. He didn't move. And in that silence, Emma made a promise to herself, not of revenge, but of freedom. Because if they had taken everything from her, the least she could take back was her power. And soon they'd learn that even the kindest hearts can burn when betrayed. The next morning, Emma woke up feeling different. Not lighter, not healed, just clear. For the first time in weeks, her mind wasn't fogged by confusion. The truth was ugly, but it was real, and that meant she finally had control again. She spent the morning in silence, sitting by the kitchen window, watching the rain streak down the glass. Every drop felt like a countdown. She wasn't going to scream. She wasn't going to cry. She was going to end this her way with calm precision. That evening, Ryan came home as if nothing had changed. He kissed her on the cheek, tossed his jacket on the chair, and opened a beer. "Rough day?" he asked casually. Emma smiled faintly. "Not anymore." Her voice was steady to steady. She turned off the TV and sat across from him at the table. "Ryan," she began softly, "I need to ask you something." He looked up, half distracted. "Sure. Were you with Claire last night?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Ryan froze for a split second, just long enough. Then he laughed awkwardly. "What? No? Why would you even?" "I saw you," Emma interrupted. No shouting, no trembling, just certainty. The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Emma leaned forward. "You don't have to lie anymore. I was there. At the park." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Emma, it's not what you think, don't," she whispered. "Don't insult me with excuses." He rubbed his face, sighing heavily. "It just happened, okay? I didn't plan it. It was a mistake." Emma nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. Mistake that lasted how long? Weeks? Months? He didn't answer. Didn't have to. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rain tapping against the window. It felt like the world was holding its breath. "I trusted you," she said softly. "Both of you." Ryan looked up, his voice cracking. "I'm sorry, Emma. I swear I never meant to hurt you, but you did." She stood, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I kept waiting for the truth to come from you. Didn't. I had to find it myself." She turned toward the living room, grabbed her coat, and reached for her keys. "Where are you going?" he asked, to see Claire. He stood suddenly. "Emma, don't." But she was already out the door. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, thick with the scent of wet pavement. Emma drove to Claire's apartment with her heart hammering in her chest, not from fear, but from clarity. When Claire opened the door, she looked startled. "Emma, what are you doing here? Can I come in?" Of course, Emma stepped inside. The place was spotless, candles lit, soft music playing, a picture of calm. But under the surface, tension hummed like electricity. "I talked to Ryan," Emma said. Claire froze. For a split second, her mask slipped and Emma saw the guilt behind her eyes. "How long, Claire?" "Emma, I swear, don't lie, not to me. Not after everything." Claire's shoulders slumped. She looked away. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. Emma's voice broke. "You were my friend, my sister." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean to fall for him. It just happened. It just happened," Emma repeated bitterly. "You chose this. Every time you smiled at me, every time you came into my home, you made that choice." Claire wiped her eyes. "I thought you'd moved on from him, that you didn't love him the same way anymore. You convinced yourself of that, so you could sleep at night." The room went quiet except for the rain starting again outside. Emma took a deep breath and looked around, at the familiar space where she'd once felt safe. "I'm not here to forgive you," she said finally, "and I'm not here to scream. I just wanted to see the person you became, the one I didn't recognize anymore." Claire's lip trembled. "Emma, please, goodbye, Claire." Emma turned and walked toward the door. As she reached for the handle, Claire's voice broke behind her. "I loved you, you know, not just him. You were the only person who ever saw me." Emma paused, hand still on the door. "Then you should have protected me." And with that, she walked out into the rain, not broken, but reborn. Each step away from that apartment felt like shedding a weight she'd carried for far too long. The night air was cold, but it tasted like freedom. For the first time in months, Emma wasn't running from the truth. She was walking toward herself. The rain didn't stop for 2 days. Maybe it was just the weather, or maybe the universe was mourning with her. Emma spent those first nights in silence. No music, no phone, no messages. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the hollow echo of a life that had fallen apart. She stared at the empty side of the bed where Ryan used to sleep. It was strange how absence could take up so much space. She deleted his number, blocked Claire, and then she sat down and cried, not because she missed them, but because she finally realized how much of herself she'd lost trying to keep them close. Days turned into weeks. The world didn't stop turning, even though hers had. She went back to work, smiled at people in the grocery store, breathed again. Healing didn't come as a wave. It came in fragments, small, quiet victories, like waking up one morning and realizing she'd slept through the night without dreaming of them, or walking past the cafe where she used to meet Claire and feeling that nothing felt like peace. But life has a cruel sense of irony. One afternoon, weeks later, Emma received a message from an unknown number. It was just one line. "Can we talk, please?" It was from Claire. Emma stared at it for a long time. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Part of her wanted to delete it. Another part, the one that still remembered laughter, sleepovers, and shared dreams, hesitated. She didn't reply that day, or the next. But eventually she wrote back, 1 hour, the park. The same park where everything had fallen apart. Maybe that's why it felt right poetic even. When Emma arrived, the sky was pale, and the air carried the smell of wet grass. Claire was already there, sitting on the bench, nervously twisting her hands. "Hey," she said quietly. Claire's eyes were red as if she hadn't slept in days. I needed to say I'm sorry. Not because I want forgiveness, but because I can't live with the silence." Emma didn't interrupt. She just watched the way you watch the tide go out after a storm. Claire took a shaky breath. "Ryan and I, we're not together anymore. It fell apart. He moved away. Gus said he couldn't live with what we did." Emma nodded slightly. "You both made your choices. You both have to live with them." "I know." Claire's voice cracked. "I just had lost everything, Emma. My friends, my job, my peace. I ruined the only person who ever truly cared about me." Emma's eyes softened for the first time. "You didn't ruin me, Claire. You broke me, but I rebuilt myself." The wind rustled the leaves. The world seemed to pause for them two women, bound by pain and memory. Claire whispered, "You're stronger than me." Emma looked at her for a long moment. "No, I just decided to stop being the victim in a story I didn't write." Claire's lips trembled. "Do you hate me?" Emma shook her head. "No, hate would mean I still give you power over me." "I don't." Claire nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for meeting me." Emma stood. "Take care of yourself, Claire." She walked away again, but this time there was no heaviness in her steps, no ghosts pulling her backward. As she crossed the park, the sun broke through the clouds. A single beam of light fell across the path ahead of her. It felt like a sign, not of forgiveness, but of freedom. Over the next few months, Emma changed in quiet, beautiful ways. She started journaling, volunteering, meeting new people, not out of loneliness, but curiosity. Her heart still carried scars, but they no longer hurt when she touched them. They had become proof of survival. One evening, while sitting on her porch, she looked at the sunset, pink and gold spreading across the sky, and smiled to herself. Everything she thought she needed, the perfect husband, the loyal friend, the picture-perfect life, had been illusions. Sometimes losing everything is what teaches you who you really are. And for the first time in years, Emma felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She whispered to the fading sun, "Thank you for leaving me. You taught me how to stay." Because in the end, betrayal didn't destroy her, revealed her strength. If this story resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Your journey is valid, and you are not alone. It's strange how life keeps moving, even after your world stops. Months had passed since that day in the park. The pain had faded into something quieter, something that didn't control her anymore. Emma had built a new rhythm. Morning walks with coffee in hand, evenings spent reading on the couch instead of waiting for someone to come home. Her life was finally hers again. Her small apartment, once filled with silence and sorrow, now held laughter again, hers echoing softly through the rooms. She had started painting, nothing professional, just splashes of color that felt like emotions turned tangible. Some days she painted storms, other days sunsets. Each canvas felt like a step forward, like she was slowly coloring over the gray parts of her past. Her friends, the real ones, came back into her life, one by one. They had been cautious at first, unsure how to approach her. But Emma welcomed them with quiet grace. They cooked dinner together, went on spontaneous road trips, laughed until midnight. And for the first time, Emma realized that love, true love, didn't always have to come from romance. Sometimes it came from friends who stayed when the world fell apart. One evening, while sitting at her favorite cafe, she heard a familiar laugh. She froze for a heartbeat. It was like the past had found her again. Turning her head, she saw Ryan. He looked tired, a shadow of the man she once knew. He hadn't noticed her yet. He was sitting alone, staring into his coffee. For a moment, old feelings flickered. Anger, sadness, maybe even pity. But they passed quickly. Emma stood, paid for her drink, and walked past his table. He looked up. Surprise flashed in his eyes. "Emma," he whispered. She smiled politely. "Hi, Ryan." He opened his mouth, as if searching for the right words, but none came. She didn't need an apology. She didn't need answers. That chapter was already written and closed. So she nodded once, turned, and walked out into the afternoon light. Outside, the air smelled like rain and flowers, that familiar scent of endings and beginnings. As she walked home, she thought about how different she felt. There was no bitterness in her anymore, no heavy ache. Just gratitude, not for what happened, but for what she learned. She had learned that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about freeing yourself from the weight of the past. She had learned that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt not with others, but within yourself. And most of all, she had learned that sometimes the worst heartbreaks are just the universe's way of clearing the path for something better. A few months later, Emma decided to move. A small town by the coast, quiet streets, ocean breeze, sunlight dancing through her window each morning. She started working remotely, writing articles about art and healing. Her words reached people she'd never met, strangers who told her she helped them heal too. It felt like she had taken her pain and turned it into something useful, something beautiful. Sometimes on quiet mornings, she'd walk along the beach, barefoot in the sand, the waves kissing her toes. She'd close her eyes and listen to the sea. Its rhythm, its calm, its power. It reminded her of herself. One day, while sketching by the shore, she met someone. Not in a grand movie-like way, just a simple moment of shared silence and a smile. He asked if he could sit beside her. She nodded. They talked for hours about books, music, and the ocean. There was no rush, no fear. It's two people existing, honestly and simply. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the world in gold and rose, Emma realized something profound. She was no longer afraid of loving again. Not because she needed someone to complete her, but because she had finally become whole on her own. The past didn't define her anymore. It had shaped her, yes, but it no longer held her hostage. And in that moment, as the waves shimmered under the fading light, Emma whispered to herself, "This is what freedom feels like." Because in the end, she didn't just survive betrayal, she transformed it into strength, grace, and beauty. That's how the woman they tried to break became the woman they could never forget.